Good, good morning, everyone. So today I'd like to talk about PubMed Labs, a new initiative that we are creating at NCBI for improving the literature search. So before I talk about Labs project, I'd like to just do a quick overview of the PubMed. Of course, PubMed, everybody probably needs no introduction. Everybody use it during your day-to-day work. So today, PubMed has over 28 million articles, and we are having about 2.5 million users each day. They are doing 3 million queries and 9 million page views. So even though NCBI creates about 30 different resources, and PubMed is by far the most used resource at NCBI. And PubMed is really a resource that used not just by people in the US. We still have 40% of users coming from the US, North America, but also 25% from Europe and Asia as well. So if you're familiar with NCBI literature resources, we have PubMed, we have PubMed Central, which is a full-text resource. We also have a bookshelf, and so on and so forth. So PubMed Labs is a new resource. It's a production resource that we're creating at the NCBI. So what is Labs? Well, Labs is essentially, as it currently stands, is experimental system. It's a test system that we are experimenting with new features that we would like to engage the users, and that's why I'm talking here to let you know about this new resource. I want you to try later on to see what works and what does not work, and want you to let us know so that we can make further improvement about the Labs project. So we aim to do two things in the Labs, or three things. One is to improve the search quality. One is to improve the usability, because ultimately, we would like our millions of users each day to have a better experience with PubMed or with literature search. And ultimately, we develop Labs because we are aiming to creating a new PubMed. Internally, we call it PubMed 2.0 project at this moment. And the reason we do this, of course, is we want to help users or help researchers to accelerate discovery and to do more rapid discovery in biomedical sciences. So, so this is the homepage of Labs. The one important thing I want to show you here is we have a feedback button that we particularly make it highlighted here that we want to get user feedback. So we may ask you now, you have talked about a few minutes about PubMed Labs. What is the really exciting thing or new feature about PubMed Labs? So one of the things that are different in the Labs versus the PubMed, the current PubMed, is the search mode. We make it as very simplified. We make two modes. One is the best match, relevant search. One is the most recent. That's a traditional one that in PubMed that always return you the latest paper first, the new paper first, right? So if you do a search in PubMed, that's the default. But also in the Labs, we feature in best match as the default, but we also make it very easy for people to switch between, it's a toggle system. We make it very easy to switch between the two systems. We also have, for each results that we return in the Labs system, we would return you associated snippets. So these snippets are sentences that extracted from the abstract that are related to your queries. So this provides you some contextual information why these returned articles are relevant. Okay. Now you may ask, PubMed, the relevant, the reverse time order works fine for me. Why do you need relevant search in PubMed? Well, because I mentioned PubMed has 28 million articles, and each year we're adding a new 1 million articles each year, and that's on average every minute. There are 2 new articles returned. Okay, I already talked about 5 minutes, so that's 10 articles. And oftentimes what we find in the analysis of the PubMed is that it's not that given a user query, we don't have answers returned. It's more oftentimes that you give a query, we have tens of thousands of articles returned. And for average user, there's no way they can go through all the pages. Okay, now also, we're in the 21st century, right? Everybody using Google, right? So when was the last time you asked yourself, you actually go to the second page of Google to find something? You probably couldn't remember that. Okay, I didn't remember that. So, but you'll say, Google is Google, you're PubMed, why do you, still there's differences. But what I can tell you is today's PubMed users is also Google users, right? So that's exactly, so Google in a way trains everybody to how to using search engine, regardless it's a special domain search engine or a general search engine. So in PubMed, we look at the logs, we find that 80% of users, they only look at the top results. They only look at the results, click the results in the top 20 returned, and top 20 being, it's a magic number because PubMed returned 20 results by default. Okay, essentially it says 80% stuff that people look at in PubMed happens in the first page. And so because of this, so back in about 2 years ago, Nicholas Fiorini and this picture, a postdoc in my lab, started working on this. So he adopted a machine learning a technique called learning to rank to trying to beef up and trying to return the most recent articles in PubMed. And so if you're doing machine learning, there are two things that are very fundamental. One is what training data do you use, right? So there's no way that we could have tens of thousands of queries and their relevant judgment annotated by human being. Okay, so at NCBI we don't have resource to that kind of access. So what we did is basically we followed the industrial standard or industrial protocol. What we create our own learning, we create our own training data based on the past usage, past user queries and their clicked documents to approximate as the gold standard. Of course, these are not gold standard. We know that. So that we call it a silver standard. But nonetheless, by doing so, we are able to gather tens of thousands of queries and even more to serve as the training data. So best match. So we also brand this. So you may not know that actually relevant search is as a search option is available in PubMed back in 2012. At the time, it's only a TF-IDF model. Okay, but almost nobody knows about this option in PubMed because it's sort of hidden. Okay, it's not your fault. It's our fault. It's sort of hidden. That's why in this new PubMed, that's why in this case, in this new relevant search, we brand it as a best match. We actually added we show you the best 3 hits in the best match algorithm and show you right above the regular 20 results. And by doing so, we're making users aware of this new search option. Okay, another thing you'll think about is by doing machine learning is you need features, of course. So we engineered about dozens of features that we think are relevant to ranking papers. Okay, so the ones that are highlighted here are actually turns out to be the most important. Okay, so essentially when you look at it, it's making sense. So for example, the past usage of article is relevant. It's approximated by the popularity. So how do we turn that? Meaning that if a paper entered is indexed in PubMed, how many times it was read by users? Okay, now you could think about, you may say, why don't you using citations? Well, at NCBI, you know that citation is not free. You have to purchase that. But on the other hand, the past click data is actually highly correlated. We know that. We did analysis highly correlated with the citation information. Also, we find that review articles are important in the relevant search mode because a lot of time when you search for something that you're not familiar with, review articles turn out to be very useful. And also publication date. Now, I already mentioned that this best match is different from the reverse time order. But on the other hand, even though people do not necessarily would want to read the latest paper in 2017, July 2018, but still, as a researcher, we're mostly reading papers in the last 3 to 5 years. Now, of course, there are cases, there are classical papers back in 20 years ago we still read. But on the other hand, most of the time, if you read most recent research, you're looking papers in the last 3 to 5 years. That's why the publication date is still important. Of course, the BM25 score, just as a measure of the relevance between the query and document, is still relevant. So because PubMed is used by millions of users, so before we actually doing this, we of course want to check to see whether this works or not. So we did an extensive benchmarking offline to measure the precision and recall, so on and so forth. But then we also trying to see move to production system to demo this system to millions of users. So how do we know? So we did a real user analysis or real user study to see whether this works or not. We're using this A/B testing, which is quite a standard protocol by these internet companies when they're measuring a new feature, whether this works or not on your mobile phone or not. So in a way, this is a controlled setting like our case and control study in biology. So here, the A setting is that we would return your results sorted by date, and the B is sorted by relevance. Okay. Now here's the click-through rate. Basically, that this measures what's the chance of user clicking the documents in the first page. Okay. Now the red line is the click-through rate by the return by the best match by relevance, and the blue one is by the dates. And you can see the difference is very obvious. It's about 17% increase in the click-through rate in the first page because, like I said, we only cared about first page at this point because 80% of the clicks lands on the first page. also, because the popularity and because the results are so relevant, we've seen in the last, just the best match was deployed in PubMed in June last year, and just in the June last year, right? Just in a couple of months, we've seen a significant increase, over 60% of increase in usage of best match in PubMed. So these days, it's now used by millions each week. We also, it's actually rare, but we also actually getting some really nice user feedback about best match. So as you can see, something here. So of course, this is already in production. This is already in PubMed, and if you want to try that, you can try it with your own queries to see if that works for you or not. But of course, as you may mention that you're using machine learning and the learning to rank. I know that as some researchers, but that's something probably not that new. What about deep learning? Well, as a research side, we do try deep learning. We have published using deep learning for improving retrieval and search in the information retrieval and NLP conferences. So these are the two papers just published this year. But we also, as a research side, we're trying to adding the semantic to the PubMed article. So we have a tool. My research team created a tool called PubTator, which annotated genes and diseases and all kinds of entities, and making that available as a separate tool. So all of these are either the source code is available or they can be easily accessed, freely accessed online by the APIs. But just want to making sure that these are not production systems. These are research grade systems. So what are the other features in PubMed in the labs project? Well, we know that there are more and more users are starting to using. Researchers are very busy. You're always trying to check out the papers on the go. So more and more users are starting to using mobile or small screen devices to look at articles. So in this new labs design, we're trying to make it a very mobile first design. So we make it a very easy or very user friendly to look at to articles in PubMed in the mobile cell phones or iPads. The other thing is we expanded function like the timeline, because we know that's a very popular feature. People like to do a search and then like to narrow the papers to a particular time frame. So we make this really nice, and it has more functions than the current PubMed does. And then we go a little bit more extreme as well. We do trying to see if we can make some semantics query understanding in the new lab system. Okay, here is an example. So if you type the word query nature, for example, and you want to find, in this case, we make our best guess. We have a computer program to make the best guess. In this case, if you're entering the word nature alone, you're probably wanting to looking for papers that are published the latest issue in the journal Nature. Okay, instead of searching nature as just a keyword or context words. Of course, if that is your intent, we can still allow you to do that. Okay, but if you interpret nature as the journal title, here we would have about 100,000 results. But if you do a search just at a general word, you would have 500,000 results. Okay, so that's the difference between the two searches, even though you're entering the same query. So here we do that for journal titles, and we do that for some of the author names as well. So these are some of the semantic query understanding efforts that we are putting into the new lab system. And the other thing we're trying to beef up a little bit is we have this new abstract display page. Okay, so here you'll find the same location where you go to the full text. We have a new small feature called Cite. Oftentimes as a researcher, you will like to add a citation to your paper or add a citation to your slide. Often I do that all the time. I have to do a copy and paste, and because copy and paste do not format in the fonts very well, you have to do reformatting. But here it's very simple. You click the Cite and you click another copy and you're done. In this new design, we have the navigational bar here, which allows you to scroll back and forth, because if you think about in the mobile phone, it's very common for people to scroll. And popular features like related article, which is very right below the normal abstract. Okay, so as I said, user input is really critical. So we do that. We showed you the feedback button and we also, the government also working with some external entities to conduct user interviews on the new lab system. So Labs was officially announced in November last year. So since then, we have getting dozens of the user feedback. So some of them here, these are quite positive, but I would be cheating you if I only show you the positive ones. So we do hear different voices as well. But mostly people are talking about because labs do not come with all the features in PubMed, so it's a subset of the features in the current PubMed, so they do want some of the features back. But on the other hand, these features may not be used by millions and millions of our users, right? So in a quick summary, Labs is a MVP product. It's not the most valuable player, it's the minimal viable product in this case. It's with a limited set of features. So we have when we develop the labs, we know what is the most user features of PubMed because we have access to the logs. So we develop with that in mind because we don't just want to create another copy of the current PubMed. We want one that is more user-friendly and towards more focus on the most used features. So it's a test system that people can use and testing new features, and we actively seeking user input. So for the future work, because lab is designed in a way that it's very easy for us to do A/B testing within some analytics tools, so we will continue to do that. We, of course, based on the user feedback, we already know that we will adding some additional features, not all the features, but additional features to the PubMed, and ultimately, maybe in 6 months or in a year, we will deliver that as the new PubMed 2.0. So, we're very grateful that the last project gets support from both NLM and NCBI leaderships. And of course, this is also, as you can see, it's a mix of both research side as well as the production side. So we have two teams, one working on the research side and one working on the engineering side. And thank you for your attention. I'll be happy to take questions.
So thank you. Really interesting to see all those new features that we're looking at. Are there any questions?
So Dr. Lu, this is a very exciting project. I think as one of the person who works both in the informatics field as well as the domain scientist, I can assure you that the broader community are really excited about you guys driving innovation and pushing into the next phase of PubMed. My question for you is that, is there a plan to integrate the literature search together with other tools at NCBI, such as clinicaltrial.gov and elements in that? How are the data sets and the trial informations are going to be connected with the new PubMed?
Great question. Actually, that's well, I didn't have time to mention, but exactly that's one of the directions we're actively pursuing. Especially, so we already have in the current PubMed, we already have some of the crosslinks between the literature PubMed as well as other databases like clinical trials. So, for example, for every document we have in the past, that NLM would parse the clinical trial registry ID and then include it in the articles, and I think we'll continue to do that. In fact, we are now pushing the publishers to provide that to us so that it's more accurate from their side. And also, I think it's a great direction to go to linking these PubMed literature with the data sets. We are working with other third-party data repositories and always making these links available when available in PubMed. So if you go to PubMed Labs or go to PubMed Labs, and if you go to the abstract page, you'll find at the very bottom we have a bunch of external links to those additional data sets. And that's actually something, so thank you for that question. I didn't mention that, but this is something we're actively pursuing at this point.
Just one more quick question.
Yeah, so if we have ideas for additional tools that could be interesting to the community at large, are you the best person to email?
Sure. Well, so as I said, as you can see, so definitely we love to hear from you. We are actively trying to trying to improve the system, but just want to making sure that I want to, that not everything that we could put into PubMed. As I showed you one slide, there are some research stuff that we have all created our own, but we're not in PubMed. But we definitely want to hear from the different opinions people have to improve in PubMed. Thank you.
Thank you once again.